Fantastic. Right, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to the session today, which is focused on one of my key drivers, my key passions, and I'm sure with everybody sat here today you share that passion. That passion, of course, is for evaluation. The key thing in every learning and development professional's toolkit: how do we evaluate what we do and demonstrate the value? So my name is Mike Collins. I work with DPG. I've had to make a really massive long trek and a big walk to get here because our stand's just there. So it's going to be dead easy for you to get information at the end as well. So we're really excited about this session and the conference indeed, because we're here today as well as Towards Maturity ambassadors. Massive advocates for the work that Towards Maturity do in terms of the benchmark surveys. And Laura Overton did a session earlier today, really looking at the L&D team and skill set in order to move L&D away from perhaps a traditional route of looking at training to being something completely different and an evolution of learning and development in the organisation. And this is all linked to evaluation, as I'll talk through today. We're also here as the UK partners of the Kirkpatricks, and part of this session is going to look at the evolution of evaluation from the original Kirkpatrick model to the new World Kirkpatrick model. And what does that mean, and how can we use that as L&D professionals? And lastly, DPG are also a partner with the CIPD's learning arm. So we specialise in L&D skills development, building confidence and capability within the learning and development profession. And it's something that we get feedback on. And it's something that we're passionate about. Okay, so today I want to start with our vision. Okay, so our vision is a step change in the skill sets of L&D business partners, not just L&D practitioners or professionals, but business partners. So they are insight-driven leaders in the organisation and not order takers. So what does that mean? So for us it means that we need a credible, trustworthy and authentic voice. We need people who challenge what's right for the business function and the individual. That we are best-in-class business partners driving a performance improvement culture. Not necessarily about training, but a performance improvement culture. People have a deep understanding of the business model and the businesses in which we operate, and also about generating insight and impact through evidence and data. So this is our vision. But in order to get to our vision, I think we have to look back in time a little bit. So let's look back to go forward. So looking at the audience, and you're quite a young and sprightly bunch, probably not many of you will remember this. But back in the day, I think this is the 1950s, the first colour television was created. Not only that, but seatbelts were first seen in motor cars. And a little known fact was back in the 50s as well, all gentlemen drove with a bow tie. If you think about TVs and Bluetooth connectivity now, if you think about back in the 50s as well, we had remote controls for TVs. I've got a 7-year-old son who has a remote control car, and the unit to control it is connected by a wire. And believe it or not, TVs had that wire as well to connect the remote. Back in the day as well, the first organ transplant was actually done. And if you think about the miracles of modern science now, with ears and various different bodily parts being grown on people's heads, science has come a long way as well. You also think back that the DNA sequence was first discovered and mapped and created in these cool models. And lastly, Lego bricks were created as well. So all this is fantastic and good. There we go. So Lego bricks was created. But the 1950s, as far as learning and development professionals are concerned, was also a key time in history, because the original Kirkpatrick model was created and devised by Donald Kirkpatrick. So this was the first framework model to follow, where training and development trainers could focus and measure the work that they did in terms of the training. So the 4 levels of evaluation, if you like, is synonymous with learning and development training. So it's reaction, learning, transfer and results. And if you look at this pyramid, I'm just going to get, you look at that huge reaction there, that you'd be forgiven for thinking that the focus for L&D and training is absolutely reaction. What do people think about what we're doing? So the thing that we're going to talk about today is how that's shifted and how the New World model underpins and supports everything that learning and development should be doing. So very different times to the world that we live and breathe in now. And in that time, we're talking some 60 years, that we've seen some big changes. So I think we'd all agree that society has changed in that last 60 years. Technology has definitely changed. I mean, I don't know how long you've been coming to the Learning Tech and Learning Skills conference, but if you just, look around the conference, the manner and ways in which technology has advanced and has become an integrated part within our lives is absolutely shocking. Politics has changed, attitudes have changed, and most importantly, the organisations within which we work have also changed. And I like to think of this as it's been an evolutionary process. So in order to get to where we've been now, we've needed to do the sorts of things that has seen systematic change, behavioural change, technology change, and we need to learn to work in a completely different world. And I want to focus on organisational change because in the organisations that you work, you'll be going through this change yourself. So over the last 60 years, there's been a massive, huge decline in manufacturing. 81% of people now are working in the service industry. We've given birth to this terminology of the knowledge worker. Organisations are now using technology to be able to scale, and globalisation is something that any organisation can do that connects to the internet. And the business that we do now is termed local because it's global, but it feels local because we've got different ways of interacting and connecting with people. And I love this about hierarchies. So if you come from a regulated environment like myself, you'll be familiar with hierarchy and this command and control that has since given way to a more democratized organizational structure, the flat armies, that everybody's got a voice, everybody can be heard, and it's not just about top-down control anymore. I also think that collaboration is a new currency, it's a new skill set for learning and development, and indeed anybody who works in the organization. And shockingly, we've now got 5 generations of people in the workplace. So whether you like the terminology or not, whether you've got your Gen X's and your millennials and your baby boomers, but how do we and organizations change to meet the needs of these 5 different generations? So given all that, I don't think it takes a genius to realize and to work out that we absolutely do need to rethink what we do and how we do it. So there's some considerations training that, some of the conversations you've been having today at very different stands or talks that you've been going to, some conversations between yourself, some things that I think that we need to think about and consider. Is that if you think back, if you've watched the Ken Robinson talk on how skills kill creativity, he talks about education systems still being in line with the industrial age, and education like a production line, standardized testing. And again, in lots of organizations, we still treat training like a production line. So we get them into the course, we get them out the course, then we get the next lot into the course and out of the course, and that's what we do, this continual cycle of training. And one of the key questions, one of the themes that I've heard coming from the conference is, do we just continually do off-the-shelf courses, training, initiatives, interventions? How can we make learning and development and learning experiences more personalized and relevant? And stop thinking as training as an event. It can be just in time, and we learn continuously. And learning, of course, just isn't confined to the classroom. It can be done anytime, anywhere. If you've got a smart device, you just do a Google search, that is learning. It's radically rethinking how people are learning, assimilating information, sharing that information, which has big impact on learning and development. The debate of whether you continually create courses or actually whether we need to think about creating resources. So job aid, support, ongoing support after any initiative or learning intervention has taken place. And I'm probably going to get chastised for this, so I'm going to whisper it. Technology is an enabler, and it's not a solution. Because whilst you might have some great conversations with technology providers, technology is only part of the puzzle. It is still fundamentally about the knowledge, skills, and behaviours that we do as learning professionals that will make the biggest difference, not the shiniest gadget, not technology on its own. And again, back to that debate that we kind of started a little bit ago. Is it really about reaction to anything that we do? Or should our primary concern and our primary focus be on about performance, on results, and demonstrating value? I firmly believe that we are in a new age for learning and development. Whether you call it training development, learning and performance, we're all here to do the same thing. And we are under pressure like we've never seen before. And if we're not under pressure, then congratulations, we're doing some things well. But I guarantee that most of us will be feeling pressure to demonstrate what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how is this leading to improvements in performance and business results. And if we don't shape up and if we don't start thinking differently, then we are going to go the way of the dinosaur. We need to evolve just as the organisations around us have done as well. So we need to learn to operate in this new world. We absolutely need to develop new skills or build on the existing skill set that we have. We absolutely need to use technology, but it's just an enabler. Technology is a means for us to add value in new and different ways. And you use collaboration to reposition ourselves as a performance partner. One of the skills that all learning professionals need to have is a consultative approach, to be able to ask the right questions, to drive the right conversations in the business. And you know something, be challenging. You know, don't just take the fact that somebody in the business comes to you and says, we think we need training, we think we need this. Take some steps back, challenge why. Why is that what you think we need? What's the actual result that you're looking for here? Let's work with you to understand what the performance need is. And this is very akin to what Laura Overton was talking about for the Towards Maturity benchmark, is that L&D have this great habit of jumping on the latest bandwagon and getting the latest gadget and getting the latest technology and running with it. And she called it a crash diet. And I think it's a really good way of looking at it. But fundamentally, it's not about a crash diet. It's about eating healthily. And this is very much something that I think these are steps that we need to take to ensure the longevity and value of learning and development. One of the key things that the Towards Maturity benchmark talks about as well is an alignment to business objectives. If we're not aligned to business objectives, then what are we doing? And of course, it's demonstrating value through results. If you can't demonstrate value, if you can't demonstrate what you've done and how you've done it and what impact it's made, again, why are we doing it? So again, one of the things that the Towards Maturity benchmark talks about is, have we got the skills? Have we got the knowledge, the skills, and the right behaviours to be able to operate successfully in this new world? And I really like this. But is it time to sharpen the axe? Whether it's a crash diet or whether it's eating healthily, whatever analogy or metaphor you like to use, for me it's very much around sharpening your axe. And if somebody were to ask you, you've got 6 hours to chop down a tree, how would you spend that time? Well, for the first 4 hours, I would spend that time sharpening my axe. And I just think this is a really, really unique way of looking at it, that we've got to get the right skills, we've got to get the right methodologies in place, we've got to approach things in the right way to get maximum value and not just be reactive and get that axe and start hitting it with that blunt axe. But of course, it is easier said than done. Now, one of the things that we wanted to pick up is just a couple of things within the benchmark study that really hammer home what we're talking about. If you haven't already checked out the study, you can do so at the Towards Maturity website. And a couple of things that came out, and again, thinking about this collaborative approach, is that in order for learning transfer to take place, which is, again, linked to behaviour change and performance impact, is that we've got to involve stakeholders. Practice and reflection are key to learning transfer. But in order to do that in the right place, we need to understand what we're measuring first. So if we don't understand what we're measuring, how can we ever be held in terms of, right, what is it that you're trying to show me? And this graph, I hope you can see it, is about results-driven L&D. So again, from the Towards Maturity study, it showed that only 32% of L&D professionals and L&D leaders actually understand what they are measuring against. 32% understand the key metrics, the measurements that they need to work with, and discuss that with business leaders. However, a whopping 68 still don't understand and work with the business to understand what it is that they need to do. How then am I going to be expected to demonstrate that if we're not even having those conversations to say this is what we need to do? So this is powerful stuff, because this is done by a huge amount of people across our industry, and they're all saying the same thing. Successful organisations have those upfront conversations. They start with the end in mind. They know what we're going to be accountable for, what's going to be measured, so we can articulate and then make sure that we're doing the right things at the right time with the right people, with the right support. L&D alone cannot do this. And there's a really nice infographic here that the Towards Maturity guys have done as well. And I just want to pick out a couple of things. One is that it is, of course, about harnessing technology. It's about recognising individual need and organisational need, but it's got to be aligned to need. This is a crucial part of the step. And of the top quartile within this report, all of them said that 100%, that's all of them, I think, if maths is right, is that they align the L&D team activity with the strategic goals of the organisation, as opposed to 56% of just the average. So what that's telling us is successful L&D teams are absolutely having those conversations with people within the business to understand what are the strategic goals of the organisation, what are the objectives, how can I best support that, and how can I support that with the people that I work with. And then what do we need in terms of L&D activity that will support that. We know what the end goal is going to be, so we know what we're measuring against. And it is about thinking, designing beyond the course. It's not about creating courses. Of course, it is about proactive connection. But the key thing here, that again, that I think that is missing in L&D is this bottom bit, which is once we've got that data, once we understand what we're measuring against, and we've got that data, how can we then turn that data into insights? More importantly, talk is cheap with empty rhetoric. It's easy coming to conferences like this. It's easy listening to seminar talks and thinking, yes, I'm going to do that. But in actual fact, this is a massive step shift and a different sort of conversation to ones that we've had in the past. And they are difficult, but it is about taking those insights and driving action back into business. And it is this action that's inspired our vision. So it is about credibility and authentic voice. People who challenge for what's right, driving a performance improvement culture. People who understand the business. If we in L&D don't understand the business in which we operate, then how on earth are we going to be effective? And it is using that data, it's using that evidence to generate the insight that will then drive what you're going to do next. Okay, so we talked about evolution, and the world around us has changed, and so too has the ways in which we can approach evaluation, which fundamentally links to everything that we need to do. I just want to focus again, if you look at the original Kirkpatrick model. So the original Kirkpatrick model started with the learner in mind. As the model would suggest, you react, you find out reaction, and you want to find out what was successful within the training, and then you move through the different levels. And it's almost like a very rigid approach. I was having some good conversations with some people earlier, and they're saying, oh yeah, well, we evaluate the training, we do the reaction, and then, we go back 6 months later and we find out what the impact has been. But what's happened within that 6 months? Anything could have happened within that 6 months to influence the change that's happened. We only start talking about results after the event, assuming that the event is the right approach. So the Kirkpatrick model has been evolved, revolutionised, however you want to describe it, but it's been looked at to better reflect what L&D professionals need within their toolkit to be better at what we do. And the new World Kirkpatrick Model better reflects that. And rather than starting with the learner, you start with the organisation at the heart. So rather than a funnel, you start with the level 4 results. And it's a much more agile approach to evaluation in the workplace. You're having those conversations to understand what are the business objectives, what are our strategic goals, how then are we going to understand what the desired outcomes are. And through working with the business stakeholders, working with the people, our colleagues, we can understand what those leading indicators are going to be that will help us understand that whatever activity we do are going to translate into the action that we need to see. And rather than transfer just being kind of, again, up here as part of this funnel, the transfer aspect of what we need people to do plays a massive part in the new World Kirkpatrick model. So, for example, this is absolutely about monitoring and adjusting, ongoing support. So how do we monitor what we've done? How do we reinforce that? How do we encourage and reward? Recognizing that it might not be training that's the answer here, but it is a behavioural shift and change that we need to see that will link to doing something different that will have a positive impact on performance. And then it's on-the-job learning. As I say, L&D cannot do this alone. We need to partner with the business to ensure that we get the right support to help us achieve what we need to. And of course, learning and reaction are still important aspects of any evaluation. So learning in terms of, have they got the right knowledge, the skills, the capability, have they got the right attitudes? Have they got the confidence to be able to go and do what they need to do, and are they committed to that change as well? And whilst you could say that reaction is of lesser importance, we still need to know that we're engaging people in what we're doing with L&D activity, that it is relevant to the job that they're doing, and that we are ensuring that we're meeting the needs of our customers. So I just want to talk through some key aspects that the new World Kirkpatrick model brings to the table. So this is absolutely an evaluation evolution. that creates strong business partnerships with business leaders as a cornerstones for success, because right at the very start, you're having those conversations that say, what is it that we need to do here? How can we work together to ensure that we're doing it? It starts any initiative knowing what the targeted and measurable business results will be, because if you don't know that from day one, then everything that you're going to do after that could hit the mark completely. And again, when you stand up and demonstrate and present back what's actually been the results, if you've not got that right, then again, why have you done it in the first place? So this is somewhat controversial, but it introduces a return on expectations, or ROE, as a method to demonstrate value, which in our opinion and our experience, working with organizations is a more effective approach than ROI. And it connects the levels. So as you can see, it's a more systematic, logical approach, but it connects the levels in planning and practice. It stops looking at them as separate entities. And of course, it broadens the concept of learning initiatives. So we know, for example, that classroom training always will have a need, face-to-face training will always have a need. Technology is, of course, influencing that in terms of the blend, whether it's 70-20-10, whether it's blended learning, whether it's face-to-face or e-learning. What we need to start thinking about is all manner of support and accountability to increase job application. That's what's key here. They can go on as many training courses as they like, but if they're not applying it and putting it into practice, then obviously we're not doing something right. So it's getting that right and recognizing that performance support is a key enabler in L&D activity. And finally, we talked a little bit about desired outcomes and leading indicators. This should drive absolutely everything else that you do. So if you get the idea that the desired outcomes and you understand what your leading indicators are going to be, then you can backtrack and make sure that everything around that is being met through what you're doing. And finally, it creates a chain of evidence that is done with partnership. Not alone. Training in isolation will not work. This is about repositioning ourselves as performance partners and working in partnership with the people that we work with to ensure success. And for me, performance should be driving every single conversation that we have as learning professionals. And this shift from training being our sole currency to developing this toolkit at our disposal that we can bring to the table, but shift every conversation to that of performance. So how can we help performance? How can we improve performance? What needs to be done in terms of changes that will help and influence and improve performance? But I recognise it's not black and white. These are difficult conversations to have. This is a mindset and even a cultural shift in many organisations, if not all of them, as to how training and development has been positioned as an order taker, as a support function, to one that's moving firmly right at the heart of the organisation and influencing important conversations. So it is a transition, but it's like any change. It's like any change situation. Things will happen through small increments. And you've got to start putting things into practice in order for change to take place. And it's getting out of this mindset that, if you're a trainer and, everything about training is about me, because I'm the trainer and I've got information for you and I'm the custodian and everything learning and I'm the person who knows the information. And to be honest, I want to know that you think that I was amazing. Who cares? Seriously. If you think that the most important thing in your training is whether people like you, whether people thought that you were great on your feet and presented information well, who cares? And it is time for you to think about sharpening your axe. Because for us at DPG, we are specialists in L&D development. We've worked with the CIPD over a long period of time, worked with the Kirkpatrick partners and partnering with the Towards Maturity team to understand the key skills and capabilities that L&D need. And whilst evaluation kind of sits right at the bottom of the training cycle, evaluation is the key thing that needs to drive everything that we do. So when you're thinking about your axe right now and whether you need to sharpen it or whether you're going to keep hammering that blunt axe at that tree, some of the development options that we've got in terms of DPG are that we've now launched new L&D qualifications. So the CIPD, under the leadership of Peter Cheese, have recognised that HR, hugely important, not going to slate our HR buddies, But L&D are absolutely key to enable organisations to be successful. So under Peter Cheese's leadership, they've re-looked and redesigned the L&D qualifications to help understand what is required for a modern day 21st century learning professional. And there's different options. We've just gone live with them in spring. So this is the foundation level in learning and development practice, focused on learning professionals and practitioners. You've then got the intermediate level, which is based on perhaps more senior L&D managers, people with a more strategic outlook. I've also mentioned the new World Kirkpatrick Model. So there is a program that you can go through that kind of unpicks and unlearns everything that you know about the Kirkpatrick model and the evolution of how this new World Kirkpatrick model has evolved, and then how you can take that and transfer it back into what you do and how you do it. And we'd like to invite you to join thousands of the L&D professionals globally who have achieved the benchmark in learning, evaluation and demonstrating results. And we're also here at this conference to launch a brand new program that is unique in the market, which is again putting L&D at the center of a business model in terms of business partnering. So the Learning Business Partner program goes live with our first program in May, and it focuses on 4 key areas for learning professionals, which is L&D expertise. So again, have we got the skills? Are we sharpening the axe effectively? To fundamentally understand the business in which we work in, the business context, the business model, to understand how we operate, to understand who we need to be working with within the business. We talked about being consultative and challenging. So we talked about business partnering. We talk about HR business partners quite a lot, but learning and development business partners are equally as important. And then a key part of this, again, is this almost scary thing about data and analytics. What data do we get? How do we analyze that? How do we interpret? What trends and patterns can I drive? How can we use that to drive the right decisions? And ultimately, where we spend our resources, our limited resources. So there's a lot of different development options for L&D professionals, and whilst at the conference we'll hear about technology and we'll hear some fantastic things around behaviour and psychology, and we'll listen to the benchmarking reports from Towards Maturity and other research out there, fundamentally it is still about the knowledge, the skills and behaviours that we display as learning professionals and how we operate in the organisational context. So we're very much proud of the work that DPG are doing. In terms of supporting learning professionals sharpen that axe to develop new skills and ultimately add value in organisations and deliver results. So what to do about it? Okay, so you can grab a bag, which is this year's must-have fashion accessory, I'd like to say. And it's already loaded with the information that I've taught through today. If you want to come on the stand a little bit later and perhaps or now and have some good conversations about what you're doing around evaluation and your L&D team and the skills that you've got in your L&D team, then the team, myself, are very happy to field questions. And if you'd like any more information on anything that I've talked about today, then we've got the contact details up there. But as I say, you can come and talk to the team. We'd love to hear from you. But listen, thank you so much for putting the time aside. I hope I kind of sparked some ideas for you. As I say, come and grab a bag, come and have a conversation with us. We'd love to know more about some challenges that you face in your business and how this new world model can support you achieve and demonstrate the best results. Thank you very much.